Co-Chair Nemus. Co-Chair Flannery.
Here. Okay, it appears we do have a quorum, so we are constituted to do business. We need to approve the minutes from the October 21st meeting. Do I have a motion on that? So moved by Senator Main. Do we have a second? Second by Representative Ives. All in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. The minutes are approved. First up on the agenda is the KCO presentation. If you all would like to come onto the table, please. As they are approaching, do any members of the committee have any guests that they would like to introduce to the committee? Senator Mays Bledsoe.
Thank you, Chairman. My judge executive from Boyle County, Trilly Bottom, is here with me today. I'm glad to see her. I can't see her behind the podium I'm here, but I know she's here.
Any other members have any introductions they would like to make? Representative Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My magistrates from Grant County, Ackland Riley, is here with us today. Thank you.
Well, my judge is getting ready to testify, so I'll let him introduce himself, Judge Mosley.
All right. Representative Neighbors? None? Okay. All right. All right. The floor is yours. If you all would like to introduce yourselves for the record, please, and please proceed.
Jim Henderson, Executive Director at KCO.
Adam Onan, Union County Judge Executive.
Dan Mosley, Harlan County Judge Executive.
Shelley Hampton, Director of Government Affairs for KCO.
Ready for us? All right. So thank you all for letting us come over today, and we will be as brief as possible. I really appreciate particularly members of the House caucus that met earlier in the week. I know you've had a long week, and 3 o'clock on Thursday's not always the easiest time to be here either for some of you. So thank you all so much, and appreciate Chairman Flannery for allowing us to come back. You've got a couple of passionate county leaders here and a passionate KCO lead person in Shelley Hampton here who will do most of the testimony. But just to kind of set things up, in September, Chairman Flannery invited some county officials here to talk about the financial constraints that counties are facing relative to jails, and we really appreciate that opportunity. It really kind of set up today's testimony perfectly, because our KCO board has spent the greater part of the last year talking about the legislative priority that we would focus on this session, and we decided early in the year, Judge Mosley, to lead our board to really just focus on this one topic coming into this session. We don't really have any other priority that we're going to be talking about. This will be the issue that you'll hear county officials talk about frequently throughout the remaining months of this year and going into the session. For counties, jails have really become, I was telling somebody outside earlier, much like the way the pension crisis may have felt for the legislature a few years ago. It really is reaching that kind of crisis level where it is the thing that is pulling everything counties have in resources to. And so to call it a crisis really isn't an overstatement. And in September, you heard from some county officials who testified about their individual plight. And I think about Judge Tall, who's here today, and we have a number of county officials in the room today. That's how important this issue is across the state. But Judge Tall is a first-term county judge who came into a county that's one of the more economically advantaged counties, Hardin County, Elizabethtown, that area, and started out 3 budgets ago, with a $2 million infusion into his jail fund from his general fund. This year, a budget of over $6 million. McCracken County's nearing $10 million. Warren County's at $4 million plus. These are counties that we look at as counties that are doing well. So imagine how this is impacting counties across the state. And I wanted to update quickly a slide that we had in September that showed the trend up through the last fiscal year. We didn't have all the financials for fiscal year ending June 30 of 2025, but you can see on that slide that since 2019, the amount of general fund contributions that counties are making into their jail fund have increased by 76% just in 6 budget cycles. So again, to call this a crisis is really not an overstatement. So, but we told you today, we just setting the stage. We're not going to relitigate the problem. Many of you have been very sympathetic and understand this situation. The stage has been set for us to really talk about solutions, and that's what we're focused on going into this session. Again, our board of directors spent over the summer and fall months developing a pretty comprehensive approach, a 3-pronged approach to how to go forward. And we call it Reshaping the Shared Responsibility of County Jails in Kentucky. And primarily 3 things. We're focusing on incentivizing regional jails. We understand that has to be a part of the conversation going forward. Clarifying the responsibility of pretrial felony detainees, and again, we'll go into great depth about that. And then redefining the model for how counties do the contracted housing of state inmates. And again, our presenters will be talking about these in detail. So with that, I'm going to pitch it over to KCO President, Union County Judge Adam Onan.
Thanks, Jim. The first provision of our proposals, as you see on the slide, is incentivizing our regional jails. For several years, regionalization has been a recurring topic whenever we have been here to discuss jails, and our board has actually embraced the idea and suggested some practical ways that we can help counties join together to establish jails where it makes sense for those counties working together. Today, Kentucky has 70 full-service jails and 3 life safety jails. 43 counties, including my own, Union County, do not operate a jail, yet we remain responsible for the care and housing of individuals that are arrested within our community. To meet this requirement, we have contracted with Webster County, our neighboring county. Webster County houses all of our inmates now, and not only does this work well for Union County, it's a lifesaver for Webster County to put money into their fund as well. By closing our jail, just for an example, when we went through the process of trying to decide, we knew it would be a tremendous savings when we closed our jail. Our first year, we saved $700,000 by closing our jail and taking them to Webster County. There are currently only 4 regional jails in the state, but we know that there are clusters of counties that are interested in moving towards a regional model. Now, regionalization may not work everywhere, but in areas where it is feasible, we believe some targeted small incentives and statutory adjustments would make this option a far more attainable goal. One of the most significant barriers we hear from counties considering a regional jail is a construction cost that goes into that. Building a jail today, as you all would imagine, are extremely expensive, and many counties, whether individually or even as a group, simply lack the bonding capacity to take on a project of that scale. Another example from my home county, when we were throwing around the ideas of what we were going to do, in order to build a new jail, it was going to cost between $14 and $16 million to build that facility. We had the bonding capacity for $16 million. And I thought it was foolish to tie up all of that bonding capacity in a jail when what happens if an economic development opportunity would come along, we would be tied. So we chose to close our jail. As an incentive, we propose that the state provide a one-time funding to assist with capital construction for new regional jails, as well as expansion or renovations that would be undertaken by a regional jail authority. We also recommend a statutory change to allow counties participating in a regional jail authority to convert their former county jail into a 96-hour holdover. Holdover facilities are already defined in statute, but administrative regulations are needed to make this option a more viable option for counties. These facilities would help reduce transportation costs and give individuals who can make bail or who may be released an opportunity to do so before being transported to a regional jail in another county and then being on the county's dime. We're also proposing a change to the makeup of a regional jail authority. Current law specifies that only the jailer from the county where the regional jail is located automatically serves on the board. We recommend allowing each participating county jailer to serve, and this would provide a more first-hand experience on the board to help run that board better. Two final incentives our members support include increasing the current closed county jail supplement and providing a one-time payment to counties that move forward with a regional plan. The state currently provides an annual $20,000 supplement to closed county jails, which was established in 2006 but has never been increased. Counties appreciate that support. Union County appreciates that support, but costs continue to rise for us, even for our closed county jails. In Union County, for example, we spend just a little shy of $1 million from our general fund on jail costs, and that's with a closed jail. Increasing this supplement would help counties with rising costs and also make it more feasible for counties considering closure to take that step. And I'm telling you, it's a big step to close the county jail. We also propose a one-time incentive payment for counties that close their jail and join a regional facility. There is legislative precedent for this type of support in other regional service models in Kentucky. This payment would help offset the transition costs associated with closing a jail and establishing a regional authority, including paying off remaining debt service, feasibility studies, engineering work, and transportation needs as well. To be clear, we do not expect a huge sudden wave of counties pursuing regionalization. This approach takes time, effort, and collaboration, and it may not be the right solution for every community. However, our members believe these incentives and statutory updates would make regionalization a much more achievable option. With that, I'll turn it over to Judge Mosley for the second key component in our proposal.
Thank you, Judge Onan. Running the county jail is part of who we are. It's a core responsibility of county governments. Counties are responsible for providing for the incarceration of individuals arrested within their counties. As political subdivisions of the state, we also have a unique partnership with you all in this work. Many components of the state's criminal justice system overlap and intersect at the county level. Our second area of focus today seeks to clarify the responsibility for pretrial felony detainees. These are individuals who are housed in county jails and are awaiting trial on felony charges. They represent the largest portion of what is commonly referred to as the county inmate population. Today in Harlan County, we have 81 pretrial felony detainees out of 98 total county inmates. When a person is arrested on a felony charge and that they cannot post bail, they remain in the county jail until trial. By day 61, most pretrial felony detainees will have been indicted. However, reaching an actual trial date or negotiating a plea can take months or even years. In Harlan County, for example, we have an inmate presently who is charged with murder, and he has been there for 3 years, and he has cancer. Another inmate on a murder charge, May of 2020, took a plea deal in May of 2024. Was there 4 years. We have several inmates presently charged with sex abuse crimes. 12 of our 81 pretrial felony detainees are there on sex abuse charges. And those cases have taken nearly 3 years to get to a resolution. We also had a state inmate who had a guilty verdict overturned after being incarcerated for a few years. He had spent 3 years pre-trial in the Harlan County Jail and was reverted back to a county inmate in March of 2024. He is still awaiting retrial that's currently scheduled for August of 2026. During all this time, the county bears the full cost of housing that individual. Even after the person is found guilty, the county continues to pay for their incarceration until the day they are sentenced. It is only upon sentencing that the county begins receiving the state per diem. Yet once the inmate is sentenced, KRS 532.120 requires that all pretrial time in jail be credited toward their felony sentence. This reduces the time they will serve as a state inmate, effectively lowering the cost to the state. In Harlan County, we've even had individuals receive enough credit for time served that their entire sentence was satisfied on the day of sentencing, meaning that the county paid the total cost of incarceration. When we testified before this committee in September, Representative Michael Meredith referenced his 2022 bill that would have reimbursed counties for the credit for time served an inmate receives when sentenced on a felony charge. Senator Philip Wheeler also filed a similar bill in 2022. We believe this approach is fair, recognizes the cost borne by counties, and acknowledges the financial benefit that the state receives when pretrial time counts toward a felony sentence. We look forward to continuing discussions on how counties and the state can work together to address these and other challenges as a part of our shared responsibility for the jail system. With that, I'll turn it over to Shelley Hampton for the final point in our proposal.
Thank you, Judge Mosley. So our final area of focus, have to be the clicker as well. We are wanting to redefine that state inmate housing model as it pertains to jails, obviously. As you'll see on this next slide, so in FY25, county jails has housed an average of about 7,120 state inmates on behalf of the state. There's a KRS that requires most Class D felony inmates and some Class C felony inmates, to serve their sentence in a county jail. But county jails also house state inmates awaiting classification, which means they're waiting to find out their housing status or their programs that they need. So they're waiting at the jail for that classification by DOC. We also house parole violators and alternative sentencing participants. And so you can see there's the numbers for the jail population for FY25. So currently counties receive a per diem of $35.34, and we appreciate that. You just raised that from $31.34 3 years ago, and that was sorely needed, and that had not been done in 8 years prior to that. So thank you so much for that. But by comparison, the average daily cost to operate Kentucky jails in FY25 was actually $63.44 per inmate. As those expenses have risen, the gap between the state per diem and the actual cost has continued to widen. And almost every county has now got to subsidize their jails revenues for the state inmates housing with local tax dollars. And that funding gap has got to be addressed. At the same time, we recognize this is a state-county partnership, and that accountability on both sides, not just the state, but the county side as well, is essential to ensure that jails are supporting our shared goal of rehabilitation. We're not here today to ask for another increase in the per diem as we have done in the past. Instead, we're proposing a completely new model for how the state and the counties partner to house state inmates. We propose requiring the Department of Corrections to enter into contracts with each fiscal court or regional jail authority. These contracts would require the state to pay the actual cost of housing state inmates rather than a predetermined per diem amount. As part of that contract, jails would be required to provide programming in partnership with the state, such as substance abuse disorder treatment, cognitive behavioral programming like moral recognition therapy or MRT, reentry services, workforce training, and academic programming as well. Many county jails offer some of these programs, but many more would expand that programming if the funding was available. It is simply almost impossible for every jail to do that on their own. We also acknowledge here today that not all jails are equipped to house state inmates. If a jail cannot meet programming and service requirements, the state may choose not to contract with that facility. We believe this proposal overall creates a fair and transparent approach. Counties would receive adequate funding to house state inmates on behalf of the Commonwealth, and the state would have confidence that inmates are receiving the tools as well as the services they need to successfully return to their communities. That's what we have today. We tried to go as fast as we could. We're happy to take any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, I may have a couple more questions after this initial one, but I'm going to ask one and then give other members of the committee an opportunity to speak. How much has the daily average costs increased in the last 5 years?
We talked about that in September. 1 second. I've got that with me, I think.
You know that, Caleb?
Oh, yeah, I don't know what
Yeah.
Yep, sorry. I don't have it, but I can get that for you to share with the committee, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. And I believe this was, I think it was mentioned in the testimony, but the increase has went up about $4 or $5 within the last couple of years.
Your per diem?
As far as what the per diem is.
The
correct?
$4, yes. It was $31.34, now it's $35.34.
All right, I'm going to open it up for some questions and comments. All right, Representative Maddox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a great appreciation for the agenda that you've presented here today because this has been a perennial issue in my home county, not just in Grant, but among a myriad of counties across the Commonwealth. But I do have a question specifically for Judge Mosley. Some comments were made on social media in which he reflected pretty harsh critique on the homeschooling community, and I wanted to make sure that that was made independently of KCO and that was nothing to do with KCO, the attacks on the homeschooling community. Thank you.
Absolutely, Representative Maddox. I appreciate the question. Certainly not a KCO issue, an issue that was specifically related to my home county, not attacking homeschooling. I don't believe there's anything needed to be done regulating that. It was an issue pertaining to some serious situations that I'd seen, particularly with people that I felt was taking advantage of those people who do a great job homeschooling their children. And I think my comments were taken out of context, and certainly apologize for any offense that was taken by that. But I'd be happy to meet with you independently to discuss that further if you would like to.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Representative Maddox.
Representative Griffey.
Thank you all for being here today, and thank you, Judge Tall. I know he's been really hammering this issue home for me and helping me out, helping me understand here. I just had a quick question on the regional jail kind of process. Have you all thought about what that would look like? Who would be deciding what counties would enter into that? I guess my main concern there would be a population issue. You know, I've got Bullitt and Hardin County, got two counties of over around 100,000 people. You know, what that would look like if there would be a population cutoff, and kind of what your thoughts are on how that would look like in practice. Thank you.
So thank you for the question, Representative Griffey. As you can imagine, we're kind of anathema to population threshold issues. That would strictly be up to those local counties to decide if they want to go together. And if they did want to do that, they potentially could use one of the existing facilities. You wouldn't necessarily have to build a brand new one. You could simply add on to one. The state inmate numbers have steadily gone down in the last 5 years, where we were housing over 12,000 state inmates, and now we're down to over 7,000, just a little over 7,000. So there are some bed spaces out there, but we would not propose to box anybody in. We would want that to strictly remain a local decision.
Senator Bledsoe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all so much for coming. I just had a couple points and then a question. Just for those who are watching or those in the room, the jail support graph that you showed from 2019 to 2025 on the increases excludes Fayette and Jefferson, which are pretty big contributors to this effort.
At 100 million.
That total. Thank you. I just wanted to highlight that since that's significant. And then second, I know we talked last time in September, we asked a little bit about what the fiscal impact was of the bills that Senator Marathon Wheeler had. have you done any updates to what your cost estimate for all the entire package might look like as we go into 26?
So we are working on a bill draft that would include that provision, and then we hope to get a fiscal note on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would be very interested. I appreciate you coming with solutions that you've already kind of come to at least a holistic approach to, and not just a help us, but hear what we think we need. I really value that. It allows us to go from the same talking points, if you will, same page, but the fiscal note and how the pieces come together are pretty important. So I look forward to that. Thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Tishner, you're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. Speaking of the same graph, in that time frame of the last 5 years, we've seen an incredible influx of illegal aliens coming into the United States. I can't imagine Kentucky would be immune to that increase as well. Can you tell me do you know how many non-citizens are currently in our jails?
No, we would either have to go by jail or possibly do an open records request to probably AOC or DOC to try to get that.
And a two-part, if you don't mind. Do you know how many jails could have possibly entered into an agreement per Section 287G of the Immigration Act? I know Oldham County has done that in our jail, and they've seen a big increase in profits for the jail.
Yeah, I think we actually recently looked at that because some other questions that have arisen. But I think there's maybe 10 or 12 counties, or maybe there's 10 or 12 that have either looked at it or in the process. But I can't remember. Kayla, do you remember the number of the jails in the state that can hold federal inmates at all? Because not every, I mean, there are a lot of counties that actually have contracts to hold federal inmates, and so they would naturally they'd be the only ones who could be eligible for this particular population. So there may be that number of counties that have federal inmates may be higher than that, about 20, yeah, that could do that if they wanted to.
So,
but less than that actually have filed that paperwork to do that.
Okay, and so I wasn't aware that only certain jails could hold federal. I was under the assumption that anyone could enter into that ICE agreement to be able to hold, especially if they're in their county. But I guess you're saying they would just have to go to a county that is able to hold those inmates.
They can if they're eligible to hold federal.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thanks so much.
Senator Mills.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too like this graph here. It's first of all, it's simple. I can understand it. But my question I have a two-part question, but the first part is this $169 million. I'd like for the judges to comment. If the county judges and fiscal courts didn't have to spend that on jails, what would that money be spent on in your counties?
Well, roads would be one. Well, that's like sitting me down with a wish list with Santa Claus. But it would directly. Let me just say the most broad picture I could paint is that it would directly go back to the constituents in our county for services, things that they need. Maybe even more enhanced ambulance services, but more people on our senior programs to feed. More parks in broader areas of our communities, more economic development money that we would have to pour back in to be hopefully self-sufficient with our communities as best we can. So that's a pretty broad list, but just about anything you can imagine we would try to invest in.
Judge Mosley?
Senator Mills, great question. I mean, economic development, it would be more investments in that. Obviously, my area of the state has been ravaged by the war on coal, and we need as much investments in infrastructure and build-ready sites and those investments in broadband to get internet out to the hills and hollers. Water. I mean, we've had water crises as well. Continue to invest in that infrastructure, but you got to balance and act, and that's where we've been. And when I first took office 11 years ago, we were subsidizing the jail fund $200,000, and this year it looks like it's going to be over $1.2 million. Wow. So that just puts it kind of into perspective on how we've seen this worsen at a time when, there's been other decline in revenues.
And then second, Mr. Chairman, the second part of my question is, I too like the idea that you're coming with a kind of a new idea, new offer, something new for us to think about. And one of the things I like about your solution is you're talking about you would enter into an agreement, and then part of that agreement would be possibly new services that inmates could possibly receive. And this may be a number that you could bring back to us. But my question is, how many inmates would possibly receive rehabilitation services under these contracts that aren't receiving those type of services now?
Certainly try.
Yeah.
To address that, Senator Mills, one of the talking through in my head about how we were going to do Union County, I'm not a firm believer that much good happens in a county jail without programs.
That's right.
And if we were going to build a jail to get it built at $14 to $16 million, that would completely cut us out of being able to offer any of those services that might help cut down on the turnstile that we have coming in and out. So great question, and we look forward to the partnership that we can develop with the state moving forward on solutions.
Yeah. Thank you.
Representative Freeland.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the presentation. And I hear from my commissioners and magistrates on how unsustainable this has become. And mostly I hear from Commissioner Collins in Marshall County, Shelley. But years ago, not that many years ago, I know that in our county, our jails were revenue producers. So, how things have changed. And my question is in other states, is this crisis, is it the same in other states like it is here in Kentucky?
Yeah, I will say misery loves company. When we attend NACO meetings, National Association of County meetings, we are not the only state talking about how the criminal justice system, incarceration, and all things related to that are draining county budgets. So we aren't necessarily unique. Maybe one of the things that makes us a little more unique is that relationship we have on contracted housing of state inmates. That is not something that happens in every other state. And so that's the area that used to be something that was kind of a subsidy and maybe even a prop that could have tilted from red to black for the budget. Now that in and of itself is so inadequate that counties that do hold state inmates are talking about how much that piece is also costing. So that is a little bit unique to Kentucky. Not every other state has counties contracting to house state inmate populations.
Okay, so Kentucky's a little unique in that regard?
In that particular area,
okay.
Yes.
All right. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Maiden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess my question would be, I look at that map and is that, I don't think we have any more inmates than we were having 4 or 5 years ago, and it's usually 80-85% related to drug. Is that still what it is? And I just wonder why the cost. Is it because of the medical increasing, or what do you think why is the cost rising so fast, so quick there in just a couple years?
It's inflation with medical, food, personnel costs, health insurance for personnel, maintenance. Everything, as we have all seen in our own daily lives, has increased, and so really, to say it's one thing or another would be inaccurate. It is a broad everything that relates to the incarcerating the individual has went up, and then particularly in the Harlan County case, pre-COVID, we had 166 state inmates. And today we have 82. Once the commutation of sentences occurred and people were released, those numbers have not built back up to where they were pre-pandemic.
That's even scarier to know that you've got half as many as you had pre-COVID, but your costs are escalating, continue to escalate.
Declining revenue and increased costs.
That's scary.
Very.
Anyone else? Okay, I will close on this. Obviously, this is a very important topic. I just think we need to be mindful that although it's an issue that we need to address, we probably wouldn't be here if there were really easy solutions on that on this topic. So I think we need to be mindful that this is not something that there's a real easy fix. I do believe there are some fresh ideas here that gives us something to work with. I think that's really, really good, and we will do our best. Let's keep this conversation going, and I appreciate your all's presentation today.
Thank you all.
Thank you for your time.
Next up, Kim Banta and the firefighters, if you all could make your way to the table, please.
Chairman Flannery, I want to thank you very, very much for hearing us today. And my name is Kim Banta. I am the representative of the 63rd District in Kenton and Boone counties.
My name is Jeff Taylor. I am the Legislative Affairs Director for the Kentucky Professional Firefighters.
And I'm going to let Jeff take this, but I want to give you a couple statistics very quickly. 14% of firefighters are going to be diagnosed with cancer. 72% are going to die from that diagnosis. Sometimes I hate coming up here with these bills to expand the cancer diagnoses for firefighters because I'm really terrified that people will stop going into the profession. But what I'm hoping is by showing the support and the camaraderie and how much we care about them, that it will keep populations in the firefighting thing. With that, I'll let Jeff do it.
Good afternoon, Chairman Flannery and members of the committee. I'll be very quick. Thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the Kentucky Professional Firefighters and the thousands of professional firefighters who serve across the Commonwealth. My name is Jeff Taylor, and I am the Legislative Director for the KPFF, and I have proudly served as a firefighter for nearly 21 years. Today I'm here to talk about an unseen fire, one that's taking more of our brothers and sisters than collapsing roofs or flashovers ever have: occupational cancer. Under current Kentucky law, certain cancers are recognized as presumptively caused by occupational exposure in the fire service. This includes cancers such as brain, bladder, colon, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. We appreciate the leadership that helped establish this protection. It was an important step forward. But as science has advanced, so too has our understanding of what truly kills firefighters. For generations, the public associated a firefighter's death with a tragic fireground event: a collapse, an explosion, a rescue gone wrong. But today, the numbers tell a different story. According to the International Association of Firefighters and the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, over 65% of firefighters who die in the line of duty today die from occupational cancer. The IFF Fallen Firefighter Memorial now adds hundreds of names each year, and nearly 75% of those honored are cancer deaths, not traumatic incidents. Here in Kentucky, since 2002, we've lost more firefighters to occupational cancer than to fires, cardiac events, or other on-scene incidents combined. That means when a Kentucky firefighter raises their hand to take an oath, the most likely cause of their line of duty death is not fire, it's cancer. Why is this happening? Modern firefighting has changed. Fires today burn hotter, faster, and more toxic than ever before. Every time we enter a structure, we're exposed to carcinogenic gases and particulates released from synthetic materials, diesel exhaust in the apparatus bays, PFAS chemicals in our turnout gear and foams, chronic exposure to benzene, formaldehyde, dioxins, and heavy metals. Even with improved decontamination practices, the exposure risk is impossible to eliminate. It's built into the job. And the research is clear. These exposures are directly linked to cancers like prostate, pancreatic, thyroid, breast, esophageal, and multiple melanoma. Yet Kentucky's presumptive cancer laws does not currently recognize these. Every year, our IFF family gathers in Colorado Springs at the Fallen Firefighter Memorial. This year alone, 311 names were added to the wall, and more than 2/3 of them died from cancer. These were not retirees decades removed from the job. They were men and women in their 40s and 50s, still active in service, with families depending on them. I've stood beside the families of Kentucky firefighters who battled pancreatic cancer, thyroid cancer, and multiple melanoma, all diseases strongly linked to occupational exposure, only to learn those diagnoses weren't covered under state law. It's devastating to see a family fight not just cancer, but bureaucracy. The World Health Organization, International Agency for Research on Cancer, classified firefighting as a Group 1 carcinogenic occupation in 2022. That means there is conclusive evidence that firefighting causes cancer in humans. In response, states across the country, including Indiana, Ohio, Tennessee, have expanded their list of presumptively covered cancers. Kentucky should not lag behind while our members pay the price with their lives. Expanding presumptive cancer coverage will reflect modern science and medical evidence, provide fairness for those who risk their lives daily, ensure families receive the benefits they've earned. Cancer is now the #1 cause of line of duty death for firefighters. Kentucky's laws must catch up to that reality. We respectfully urge the committee to amend Kentucky's current presumptive cancer law to include prostate, pancreatic, thyroid, breast cancer, both for men and women, esophageal, multiple melanoma, and other cancers identified by ALARC, NIOSH, and as occupationally linked to firefighting. When Kentucky is called for help, firefighters answer that call without hesitation, whether it's a house fire, a plane crash, or a chemical spill. We accept those risks knowingly, but we should not have to accept being forgotten when cancer strikes. If more than 2/3 of our line of duty deaths are now due to occupational cancer, then this is no longer an individual tragedy. It is a public policy failure waiting to be corrected. We're not asking for special treatment. We're asking for equal recognition of the risk we face and the sacrifices we make. We have provided the committee with an abundance of research and science that provide evidence as to our claims. It's a lot, so I don't expect everybody's going to absorb that. But I do want to add, and this is not on my list, I signed up for this job years ago, as many of my brothers and sisters have, and we do take tremendous risk, and they can't be eliminated. But if we should fall in the line of duty, our hope is that our families are taken care of, and that's just what this is a death benefit. It's not a presumptive medical coverage, it's a death benefit. So thank you for your time, your service to this Commonwealth, and your continued support of Kentucky firefighters. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. I believe this bill or a similar bill was filed by Representative Gordon in the 2025 session.
Yes, sir.
So that may be familiar with some members of this committee. Any questions or comments from members of the committee on this topic? Representative Rourke.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to say thank you to Rep. Banta for bringing this forward. Thank you, Mr. Taylor, for coming to testify today. One of the things that I remember deeply from touring the district and talking to firefighters is that when they told me about the increased cancer risks for this line of duty work, I immediately was like, what can we do? And they looked at me and said, we know the risk. We love our job. We just need you to support us in making sure that we have coverage for our members. And of course, I think as more research comes out, if we can be proactive, that's something that we should definitely do. But from what I hear from firemen all across the state, especially in Louisville, is they just want to be seen and recognize that this is an issue that they face head on every day, and they do it anyway, knowing this risk. So I'm really appreciative of the testimony today and look forward to continuing to be supportive on this topic.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you all very much.
Thank you very
for your
much.
presentation.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up is item number 5. The presenter will be on Zoom, so we will need to get this going. All right, Ashley, can you hear me?
Good afternoon, Chairman. Yes, I can. Can y'all hear me?
Okay. Before you introduce yourself, we have Ashley Spence with the DNA Justice Project. I filed a bill on this topic a couple years ago, and it was discussed in committee. Ashley has a tragic story as a crime victim and has really done an excellent job in trying to make a difference and turn that experience into something very valuable, and to make sure that other perpetrators of crimes are caught. And Ashley, we do have a few minutes for you to discuss this topic, what has been going on in other states, and if you would like to introduce yourself, and please proceed.
Thank you so much, Chairman Flannery and members of the committee. I am Ashley Spence, the founder of DNA Justice Project, and I am here today not just as a mother, but as a survivor. I was 19 years old, about to begin my sophomore year at Arizona State, and in the middle of the night, an intruder came into my apartment, into my bed, smothered my face with a pillow, and repeatedly raped, beat, and nearly killed me. I am very fortunate to survive, but he got away and I never saw his face. After he left, he said, "Do not tell anybody, because like I was watching you before, I will still be watching you and I will come back and kill you." But in spite of that, I worked day and night with detectives and there were no leads. So I dropped out of school. I moved to Newport Beach, California before relocating back to my home state of Texas. And it was here 7 years later that I received the shocking news. There was a DNA match in my case. And ironically, I moved to Newport Beach to escape this monster, but in reality, I moved to the very city that he lived. When he was apprehended, he was arrested for an unrelated offense just 1 block from where I lived all those years. He was trying to break into a home where 3 young women lived. A police officer saw him, they got into an altercation, and eventually he resisted the officer's arrest, a felony. And in California, they are one of 19 states that collects DNA for every single felony arrest. And this triggered a process that changed my life forever. When they uploaded his DNA into our national DNA database, it's called CODIS, the Combined DNA Index System, it hit a match back to not just mine, but multiple others. He was a violent serial predator. He had a wife and a son and a shed behind his home full of women's ID cards and underwear from all over the world. I wasn't the first, and sadly, 7 years went by. I was not the last. We waited on trial for a very important Supreme Court ruling. In 2013, Maryland versus King, they found that taking a DNA cheek swab for qualifying arrest is a reasonable and just part of the booking procedure. They actually compared it to fingerprints. So we went to trial, and he is now in prison through DNA and his collection law for nearly 138 years. I am so fortunate to have justice, but all victims deserve justice. And sadly, due to outdated collection policies and DNA technologies, victims and their families will continue to have justice withheld. So the truth is, if this had happened in Kentucky, you would not have swabbed his cheek, and my perpetrator would still be free right now to rape, harm, and terrorize his next victims. Just a big picture. Currently, all 50 states collect DNA for felony conviction. 31 collect for violent felony and burglary. And my home state of Texas just became the 19th to collect for every single felony. In Texas, we started this in 2019. We collected for certain violent felonies and burglary. In 1 year, we closed 240 cold cases. So people realize no one's being harmed by the database. We're saving money, we're saving lives, we're protecting victims. And so in 2023, we actually expanded to collect for all felony arrests. And it is really exciting. Texas DPS just announced in 1 year from this, we closed 1,005 cold cases. So it's a system that's really proven to work. And I know you guys are tired. Just to be very brief, just 1 more minute, CODIS is very safe and private and protected. I think this is really important. It's been around since 1998. It's not a new database. And so for 27 years, we've had 0 breaches that I know of. And it isn't your entire DNA that goes into the database, just a DNA profile, which is something very different. It's not 23andMe. It wouldn't say I'm Lebanese, that I'm predisposed to any genetic diseases. It doesn't even have a name, just a specimen ID number. And it is not accessible by third parties. you can't be precluded from getting a job by having your DNA in the database. That's not public. And furthermore, it is a federal law and requirement. You have to be able to have your DNA completely expunged and destroyed if you're found not guilty. The Office of the Inspector General, they do annual audits on the labs as well as random, and there are heavy fines and jail time if it's not followed through with. So in closing, for 7 years while my rapist was free, what haunted me the most was I would hear in my head the muffled screams of his next victim. I knew he was out there and he wasn't stopping. But now, due to forensic DNA, he is unable to harm another person again. And although he would still be free had this happened in Kentucky, we do have the power to come together to start to change that. And Chairman Flannery, I am so, so grateful for you championing this and believing this and this justice. And as you spoke to, I know that it was, I think, 2024 HB 286 to collect DNA for certain violent felonies and burglary. And I mean, when we look at that with this legislation, you would join 31 other states, and we have many more right now that are getting very close that already do this. And by collecting at booking, you would open the door to utilize rapid DNA, which y'all already do an amazing job in your state, but this would open it up to actually utilize this in booking stations. In 90 minutes, day one of an investigation, you can identify or eliminate suspects. We are in the process of rolling that out in my home state of Texas. So I'm so grateful. Thank you all so much for your time. Thank you for the work that you do. You do such incredible work. This would only continue to build upon all of your tremendous successes. You would provide justice to victims and their families. You will protect the civil liberties of those that are arrested through this. It really, truly does exonerate the innocent. And as a mother, you will protect our children. So thank you for your time, and I would be honored to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm going to make a few comments just to try to amplify a few points on this. Kentucky is in the minority on this. We're I believe over 60%, approaching 70% of states have some form of this at booking. So what she is talking about, and I also will add that in the federal system, this is used. So when you are booked, maybe they'll take your mugshot, they'll fingerprint you, go through all that whole process. This is something where there's more or less a Q-tip that's used to get this swab. It's inserted into the device, and it is used on post-conviction and several other things, but we are definitely in the minority in not utilizing this. Ashley can speak a little bit more on who pays for these devices. There are several monies that come from the federal government, and implementing those, I think that's very important to use, and the courts have ruled on this. It is allowed. It's constitutional per Maryland versus King. I will open this up to any other comments or questions from members of the committee.
Are you going to file your bill again? I think we definitely need to do it.
I am definitely considering that, yes. Ashley, everybody's ready to go home.
I understand. Thank you all for your patience, and thank you, Chairman, for having me. I'm very grateful.
Ashley, we appreciate it very much, and appreciate your presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope to see you all in Kentucky soon. Take care.
Last but not least, State Representative T.J. Roberts. All right, before you get started, Representative Roberts, I discussed this with you earlier. Let's try to keep this as brief as possible. I know a lot of us are maybe ready to leave and go home. We've had, many of us had a very busy week, but I want to give you the opportunity to discuss this, and you are welcome to proceed.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members of this committee, for hearing on this incredible opportunity to provide more resources to our law enforcement community, to promote public safety, and to align us with the priorities of the federal government. The 287G program has existed since 1996 as part of the Immigration and Nationality Act. This allows for local and state law enforcement entities to enter into three types of agreements. There is the jail enforcement model. This bill specifically addresses the task force model, however. There's also the warrant service model as well. The task force model does not change the day-to-day operations of law enforcement. Rather, what it does is it provides training, and it provides the ability for law enforcement officers to be deputized for limited immigration enforcement. This is not independent raids. This is if they pull someone over for, suppose, a DUI, they are called for any other type of case, that they are then able, upon reasonable suspicion, to investigate to whether or not the individuals involved are here legally. Right now, 10 counties have 287G task force model agreements in Kentucky, but we do not have that in the areas that we need it at. Currently as well, the training has been drastically made more accessible. It is a free training course. It is conducted online. The topics include what the actual models of immigration law are, what types of legal immigration there is. This helps prevent unlawful false arrests. It further trains them on civil rights, on liability issues, and ultimately from there, how they can go through this. Once they complete that 40 hours of training that is all online, that is paid for by the federal government, these officers are deputized by Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, and they can only engage in this limited enforcement while under the supervision of the federal authorities in order to ensure that there is oversight, that there is accountability. This model as well has since received significant federal funding that has only one string attached to it. If a local entity enters into a 287G task force model, they will now receive a $100,000 per year flat payout. The only string attached is that first year they have to buy a new patrol vehicle in it, which is frankly something that our law enforcement communities drastically need, is more resources to have more vehicles. But in addition, for every individual that is deputized, they receive $7,500 per year per officer, up to 10 officers. So this is an opportunity at no cost to Kentucky taxpayers, at no cost to our budget, to bring in up to $175,000 per year to these individuals in order to align ourselves more closely with our immigration authority to ensure greater public safety models. This model has been used, by the way, not just purely on just detecting an individual who overstayed a visa. This has been used to address identity theft rings. This has been used to address human trafficking. This has been used to address gang violence as well. So there's a significant benefit to public safety with this model as well. And I have been, in full disclosure, working with the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, legislative liaisons. This is one of their top priorities. We are open to looking into additional language to figure out the eligible individuals, eligible departments, what needs to, before any such requirement takes place. But to be clear, this is not an unfunded mandate anymore. This would ultimately provide more resources to our law enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I open this up for questions or comments, I think the important thing to really emphasize here is where he left off. This is not a unfunded mandate. This is an opportunity to potentially utilize resources from the federal government to implement those into our local communities that we serve. Maybe city police departments, sheriff's departments that can definitely use these resources. They need these resources, and I think this is something that has some promise and is worth discussing. First up, Senator Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Roberts, thank you. This is very, very educational, quickly too. We like that. My question is: so if a county signs up for this task force model, does that immediately qualify them as being overseen by federal immigration? So, in other words, the officer goes through this training. Anytime he's on duty from into perpetuity, will he be considered overseen by the federal, where he can actually do what he's learned to do or has been taught to do?
So under the federal law, this is only when there are available ICE agents for supervision. It doesn't have to be in person, but there has to be that level of supervision.
So what is that? How do you get to that? How do they qualify for that level of supervision? Do they have to be in the county doing operations, or?
That they do not. No, it can be you have a field office liaison that is able to advise them, hey, these are the facts that are happening. What do I do from there?
Okay.
So it does not have to be in person frankly, ICE doesn't have the power to. They don't have the manpower to do that.
So just an open line of communication to an ICE official to give them direction on what to do next.
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Mills. I believe we have a question or comment from Representative Stalker.
Thank you so much, Chairman. Yes, a couple of questions. Curious about what conversations that you may have had with state police as well as judges as far as feedback from them. Is this something that they are requesting, are in favor of? And then the second part to that question is, what documentation would individuals need to begin carrying in order to defend their ability to be rightfully walking about, driving their car, what have you, to prove their citizenship or their ability to be here legally?
Certainly. I mean, so one, on the conversations that I have had conversations with the Kentucky League of Cities, with the Chiefs of Police Association, with the Sheriff's Association, specifically looking at department numbers on this. That's largely where I'm realizing there isn't much of a problem with this language of the string attached for new vehicles. It's already wildly popular. It was a very accepted practice up until 2021, when the federal government stopped having task force model agreements. And since 2025, there's now 10 counties already in Kentucky that have adopted them. Those are Bracken, Butler, Clinton, Davies, Grayson, Hickman, Lyon, Marshall, Scott, and Union. So it has drastically grown ever since this has returned in 2025. We now have 4 states that have statewide rollout of it. Those include Florida, Georgia, Texas, and now Virginia as well. So this has been a growing program. As for the state police issue, this just gives them more resources. One of the number one issues that I have heard on this is that they don't have access to the databases. You enter into a task force model with them, you are able to access the DHS database. The Department of Homeland Security has nationwide data where KSP is often limited as to the information that they are operating under in their law enforcement capacity. So this gives more information as well. And further, in terms of the question of what kind of papers do you need to be carrying, same as you do right now. And by the way, this isn't stop and identify. This isn't, oh, I think this person's here illegally, I'm going to initiate a stop. A stop has already been initiated. So the types of documents you already need to have, and simply put, access to that DHS database, they can verify social security numbers right then and there. They can do, there's that level of verification to ensure that someone is here legally, but a driver's license is sufficient, legal residence, just any of those types of matters, right? This is one of these issues where there has to already be reasonable suspicion that an independent crime has been committed. This isn't going to result in individuals just doing pure immigration controls.
Chairman, may I follow up, please?
You may.
Thank you so much. Here's my concern with the response is that what we are seeing in multiple places and cities is that individuals are literally being kidnapped off the streets by individuals who are not showing identification, who are not in properly marked vehicles, who are not providing warrants. I think most recently, the one that is in the forefront of my mind was something that was happening in Chicago outside of a preschool. So I have a lot of concern about giving individuals, deputizing individuals to kind of take on a new jurisdiction when we are seeing people who cannot be properly identified taking people off the streets, and then those individuals are landing in places that sometimes their loved ones are not even sure of where they're going. So I feel like this would simply exacerbate an issue that is already on its own out of control. Is there anything in this bill that would require those individuals to make sure that they stay clearly visible, that they are not covering their identity, that they would be providing proper documentation and identification as to who they are so that somebody knows this is a real official? Is there any? Elaborate on.
Absolutely. So a few things. First, I wish we lived in a society where ICE agents could feel safe without getting doxxed with their faces exposed, but that is not a society in which we live in. Second of all, to the concern regarding just people being picked up off the streets with no prior knowledge, no prior warning, as mentioned previously, 287G only allows for limited immigration enforcement in the scopes of their day-to-day duties. There has to be some level of suspicion of an underlying crime, whether that be DUIs, domestic violence, traffic offenses, violent crimes. There has to be something else. 287G, as a matter of federal law, does not allow for state entities to engage in their own independent immigration enforcement. It allows for them to ultimately engage in enforcement when their day-to-day job intersects with the immigration issue. So it doesn't have that issue at all. As for plainclothed officers, that's a common practice. If an undercover agent is deputized, that would be within their right, but they'd have to be investigating an underlying offense, whatever that would be, like task force models, as I mentioned, identity theft, human trafficking, smuggling issues, gang violence. There are times where undercover is necessary, and I think that's especially the case here when we realize that this is about individuals engaging in enforcement of our state laws, but then immigration intersects.
Thank you. Anything else, Representative Stalker? All right, Representative Rorks.
Thank
Then
you, Chair.
Representative Brown, you'll be after her.
Thank you, Chairman. So I heard it said, Representative Roberts, that more resources would be provided to law enforcement. Am I correct that they can already enter into these agreements without this legislation?
They are permitted, yes, but right now with the areas that have it, we don't have these agreements in the areas that need it most. This is one of these issues where I frankly, as a legislature, have the ability to make these requirements. It's been done in, as I mentioned, 4 other states. It's being considered in others. I think it's well within our purview to make such a requirement.
May I follow up, Mr. Chairman?
You may.
When you say we don't have it in areas that need it the most, what do you mean by that?
Northern Kentucky, for one, where I reside. We are right along a major highway. Counties that are along I-75, that are along I-64. Those are areas where, especially whenever we're talking about other areas, such as what task force models have been particularly used for, trafficking, smuggling operations, those are the areas that particularly need it, those specific ranges. And we can see that, frankly, it's needed everywhere in Kentucky, not just the 10 counties.
Thank you. And I just have one more brief question and maybe a brief comment, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
You may proceed.
Thank you. Representative, I also heard that you say these are wildly popular, but then it's only been utilized so far by 10 counties. So how many counties would this apply to, and what is your understanding of why more haven't entered into these agreements?
I think the reason why, first and foremost, in 2021, the Biden administration completely stopped working with state governments. That was something that many law enforcement agencies had expressed immense frustration with throughout the country, that the 287G task force model essentially evaporated upon that administration. It was only just brought back in, I believe, February with Executive Order 14159 in order to revive this task force model. And in that time, I think the number one problem is just a lack of knowledge that this program exists now. In fact, there's reports from as recent as July saying that it still doesn't exist. At that point, it had existed for 5 months. So I think it's actually incredible that we have 10 counties that have learned of this new model and have decided to re-enter and bring it back in.
Just my brief comment on this is, I'm definitely interested in talking more to our local law enforcement agencies. I think this really gets down to being a local control issue for me. Our law enforcement agencies, I think they know their jurisdictions best. They know where their resources need to be allocated. There are these carrots that you speak of if they are interested in, entering into these models. But I think when we talk about law enforcement, we have so much understaffing already. We're pulling people away from investigating our violent crime. And I think this is an issue that we're really expending a lot more resources than what the actual problem is. I'm not saying that there aren't folks that haven't been taken that it applied to, but I think this is a question of how much are we willing to divert resources away from what our local law enforcement agencies who know their areas best say they need. So I'd be really interested just to hear what they have to say on the matter, because I think they already have this tool. I'm not really sure why we need to require everyone to be a part of it. Thanks.
Brief response, Mr. Chairman.
I will allow you to respond in conclusion. There's, I believe, one other question or comment from Representative Brown, and then I'll let you conclude in response to his question or comment.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I look at this document, it says that it's a budget request for 26. Is that correct?
This is a separate bill.
I don't know how you can separate that, Mr. Chairman, just a clarification from the chair.
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
This document. It has budget request, it's 26, regular session, BR 1139.
Representative Brown, BR stands for bill request.
That's and the bill request cannot be made until we're in session. We're in the interim joint session now, and I think that any movement or movement on behalf of this committee is out of line because this cannot be introduced until we're in regular session.
Yeah, well, the bill's not being introduced, it's being discussed, so I don't think it's out of line at all.
Okay.
That's the purpose of an interim committee, is to discuss potential pieces of legislation, whether you are for them or not.
Just may I close in my comments? I think that this is causing a lot of furor. This has come under the cover of darkness, if you will. I think a lot of people in Kentucky don't even know this is of concern. Folk are concerned about ICE and ICE's relationship to our law enforcement and to our citizens. And it is real important that we do not go into, in my opinion, something that removes due process. And that's a problem as I see this. So I would not be in favor of this and moving forward. I think it's something that deserves a lot more conversation and a lot more conversation of the full General Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do believe we probably will continue conversation on this, and this is the start of the conversation. Obviously, no votes will be taken today because we cannot vote on this, but anticipate there will be one, maybe two pieces of legislation filed on this issue, and it will go through the same process like any other bill. Representative Roberts, if you want to conclude and finish this item on the agenda.
Certainly. Mr. Chairman, I want to thank you once again for hearing this bill. To the point of transparency, that's what this committee hearing is about. It's to let the public know that this is something that is being considered. This is something to ensure that the conversations are had, that we hammer it out, find weaknesses, find potential modifications. It further, to the point of concerns about the federal government, this is a way to ensure greater senses of community policing, of allowing it to be done and administered by the local level. Further, this is not a bill that would in any sense disrupt or divert resources from the day-to-day operations of a law enforcement agency. This bill specifically indicates limited immigration authority as defined by 287G, which requires some other level of a state level offense. So the individuals that we are deputizing here, they're not here to reprioritize anything. They continue their day-to-day jobs as it is. And to the point of local control is generally a good idea. Generally, there are matters that towns, counties have more understanding of. What roads need to be prioritized, economic development, water issues. But we don't use local control as an excuse to violate the First Amendment. We don't use local control as a violation to violate the Fourth Amendment. There are some things that have been taken off the table. Immigration and naturalization has been a matter left up to the federal government since we codified our Constitution in 1787. This has been a plenary federal authority, and this is one of those matters to ensure that we are being a good partner with the federal authorities, to ensure that we are enforcing federal law, that we are making sure that our streets are safer, and also that law enforcement is getting additional resources. We're leaving opportunity on the table by not moving this bill in the 2026 session. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Roberts, for your presentation. Before we adjourn, are there any members of the committee that want to introduce maybe people that walked in after the initial introductions?
I'd just like to take this moment to recognize a couple of my constituents who are here today. We have our Deputy Judge Executive, Bridget Compton, with us, as well as my Adair County Jailer, Jamie Powell. So thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you, Representative Neighbors. Okay, this is the likely the last meeting of the interim. It's hard to believe that it's November. December will be here soon, and then January is coming. So being no further business before the committee at this time, this meeting is adjourned.